For some more insight, we're joined by Ugandan journalist Suhail Mugabi, who's been following the story. Suhail, a very good evening to you, and thank you so much for taking the time. It's been almost 2 years. It's almost unimaginable what these children have been through within those first 2 years. Talk to us about the stories that you're hearing about the impact of this 2-year closure on children.
Thank you, TPSO, and I am happy to be here. Now, to tell you how this has been very impactful, especially in Uganda, the challenges have been immense. According to UNICEF, the school dropout rate has increased because of the closure. If I might remind you, the schools were closed in March 2020. Now we are in January, and today is 10th, 2022. And that can tell you that for 22 months, almost 2 years, the schools have been closed. What are some of the challenges that the students and pupils have faced because of the school closure? If I might tell you, most of them are social challenges. One of them is an increase in early marriages. Because of the poverty rate in Uganda, there has been a spike in early marriages. 2, teenage pregnancy. Now, because most of the secondary school going girls had to stay at home, many of them were involved in social activities and then involved with boys. So the teenage pregnancy rate in Uganda has increased because of the closure of schools. Another increase is in crime, rape, and defilement, which is a very, very bad issue, if I might talk from my point. And now one other issue that we have is that in this case right now, we have girls who are reporting to school when they're pregnant. For the boys, on the other hand, many of the boys have joined they have gone on to be casual laborers, working for about $10 a day so that they can sustain themselves. And then for the teachers, some of the private school teachers, because they weren't on the government payroll, had to leave the profession to join other professions where they can earn a buck. This tells you that the school closure has really impacted several people, not only the students, not only the pupils, not only the teachers, but also people who are working in schools. Just imagine when you have a school and then you don't see anybody in it. And another thing that you can also imagine is that most of the schools that we have that are in the private sector are schools that are supposed to service loans from banks. So many school owners had to close shops, others had to turn schools into other businesses so that they could survive the pandemic. That is how impactful the COVID-19 pandemic and the closure of schools has been on the people of Uganda.
We'll come to the justification for such harsh measures in just a moment, Suhail. But government has said that it had given parents a reading or educational material so that the children can continue learning. But how possible was this, especially given the vast socio-economic inequalities that you've just also painted out?
If I might point out, government said that it distributed radios for people who are living in rural areas so that they can go on with their studies. And then also carry out classes on public radio stations. However, it wasn't impactful and it wasn't a very viable idea. It was an idea that not very many people can adopt. And you can also imagine people who are living below the poverty line. What do they have to do to survive? They have to go to the villages, they have to go and dig. So then expect a person or a child who's at home to study effectively in class. And you see, there is a difference when you're learning from a voice and when you're learning with the physical presence of a teacher. So government tried its best to bridge the gap, but it wasn't all that supportive. And now for the people who are living in the urban areas, those who are a little bit privileged because some of the schools had e-classes, others would attend to private tutoring lessons on Zoom, Skype, and also other networks, as well as also online lessons. But those are selected few. Those are the people who can manage. But then if you're looking at the majority of the Ugandans, not all of them have the means to afford computers, the means to afford smart televisions where they can attend classes. So on the other hand, it wasn't a viable idea. And in my opinion, I think 60% of the exercise to roll out teaching in rural areas really failed.
So you said something that has been seen pretty much across the African continent with regards to the impact of COVID-19 on education, particularly that of a high dropout rate. One can only imagine just how greater it is in Uganda, given that it's almost been 2 years. You've mentioned the incidents of rape, defilement, and obviously children who've been affected and afflicted by malnutrition because of the closure of feeding schemes. How are children expected to assimilate back into school? I mean, even those who've already started working, for instance.
Now, that's going to be a very hard decision, and it will all fall upon the students and also the pupils. Just imagine now a child who was 16, who was supposed to be in secondary school. Now they are an adult, they're 18, they're supposed to fend for themselves, they're supposed to look after families. Some have even gone on to make families. So just imagine a person who was supposed to sit their finals, the final secondary school exams at the age of 18. Now they're 20, they're about to make 21. So you can just imagine that. But what I can say is that this also shows a ray of hope. The reopening of schools have given very many parents hope. People were dying to take their children to school. And although there are still some challenges, the reopening of the schools has somehow inspired some people who really felt like they should leave school to return despite the challenges, because right now, the economy is crazy. The school fees have been hiked. Private schools have doubled, tripled the fees so that they can cover up the gaps and also the loans that they had taken. School requirements are now very expensive, and transport costs have also gone up high. The COVID-19 stringent measures that have also been put in schools have also become very expensive and costly. Now, that all is going to be a burden that a parent is going to bear. The parent has to do whatever it means to send their child to school, work twice as hard, earn twice as much, and also even deprive themselves of personal needs so that they can send their children to school, because right now it's very urgent that that pupils and students return to school. The buzz around town today was crazy in Kampala. The traffic was hectic. From morning to evening, there was traffic. Parents rushing to different areas just to take their children to school. Now, the excitement of returning to school and the schools being reopened is there. The means to ensure that parents take their children to school, give them whatever they need, is still a challenge that they are trying to address. And now parents are now doing what other basic people can do, taking salary loans, trying to negotiate with their employers to give them advances so that they can pay school fees for the children for the first 14 weeks.
So, speaking of means, I'm wondering about the resources. So, government's rationale was to impede the spread of COVID-19 in Uganda for the school closures. What non-pharmaceutical interventions do they have in place, and do they have those resources to ensure that children going back into school, that influx won't create more cases, infections?
Okay, so now there's been a massive vaccination drive in Uganda. And the first thing that was done before the schools were open, they had to make sure that 60% of the teachers were going back to school, and also teaching staff and school employees have to all be vaccinated to ensure that they try to curb the spread of COVID-19. For the pupils, the ones who are, the ones who are in primary school below the age of 14, the requirement for vaccination wasn't there, but they tried to make sure that they set up isolation centers. They train a number of paramedics and also health professionals to help curb the spread of COVID-19. But the main emphasis has been put on teachers and teaching staff.
So, what about
that
children?
They can be vaccinated.
Have children started vaccinating?
Only the ones in secondary school, are the ones who are being allowed to go with vaccination tests. That one is attesting to the ones who are in higher education and advanced education and the ones at university. It's a prerequisite for you to be vaccinated. But children, there has not been so much emphasis. And that's where a big problem is. In some primary schools where we find that these schools have about 2,000 to 3,000 pupils, you find that the kids are very reluctant to follow SOPs. You won't tell kids to social distance. You won't stop them from playing. You won't stop a 10-year-old. You won't make a 10-year-old wear a face mask while in school. So that is where there is a very big problem, enforcing such measures. And you know, some of these schools are day schools. The kid might be today healthy and then might go back home when the parent has COVID-19, and then the following day the kid has to bring COVID. The kid might come to school and then also spread the virus. So it's going to be quite tricky. But what they are trying to do, they are trying to make sure that they have infrared thermometers at the points of entry. They have hand wash sanitizers and everything to ensure that they minimize or cap the spread of COVID-19.
All right, Suhail, thank you very much as always. Suhail Mugabi, a journalist in Uganda, speaking to us there from Kampala, Uganda, about what UNICEF has warned is a possible devastating effect on the education sector in Uganda following a shutdown of almost 2 years. When we return, Human Rights Watch has called laughable process, a military court process that has added more years of incarceration for Aung San Suu Kyi. This is The Globe. Do stay with us.